Did American horse racing just dodge a disaster or miss its biggest opportunity for reform? Because after months of debate, scientific review, and growing pressure from across the racing industry, HISA has officially made its decision on Lasix. And the answer is clear: nothing is changing. The Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Authority has voted unanimously to keep the current Lasix rules exactly as they are. That means Lasix will continue to be allowed in many races across the United States, while remaining banned for 2-year-olds and horses competing in stakes races. For some people, this was a massive victory for horse welfare. For others, it was proof that American racing still cannot let go of medication culture. And depending on who you ask, this decision either protected horses or protected the status quo. Because few subjects in horse racing create more controversy than Lasix. Even people outside racing have probably heard the debate at some point. Supporters say it protects horses from bleeding in the lungs during races. Critics say it damages public trust and gives American racing a reputation problem internationally. And now, after years of uncertainty, HISA's vote may shape the future of racing in the United States for a long time to come. So today, we're breaking down exactly what happened, why this vote mattered so much, what the science actually says, and why this debate is far from over. Because this isn't just about medication. It's about welfare, it's about integrity, and it's about whether horse racing can still convince the public that the sport is evolving. First, we need to understand what Lasix actually is. Lasix, also known as Furosemide, is a diuretic medication used in racehorses to help reduce exercise-induced pulmonary hemorrhage, commonly called EIPH. In simple terms, bleeding in the lungs caused by intense exercise. And this issue is very real. When thoroughbreds race at full speed, the pressure inside their lungs becomes enormous. Some horses experience ruptured blood vessels during competition, leading to bleeding in the respiratory system. In severe cases, blood can even be visible from the nostrils after a race. Supporters of Lasix argue that the medication helps reduce the severity of this bleeding and protects horses from long-term respiratory damage. But critics have always focused on another issue, because Lasix is also a powerful diuretic. Horses lose fluid weight before racing, and less weight can potentially improve performance. That's where the controversy begins. For decades, race day Lasix became deeply embedded in American racing culture. At one point, the majority of thoroughbred racehorses in the United States were competing on it. But internationally, things looked very different. Major racing jurisdictions like the United Kingdom, Ireland, France, Japan, Hong Kong, and Australia moved away from race day medication years ago. That left American racing increasingly isolated. Critics began asking difficult questions. Why were American horses racing on medications that international horses competed without? Was racing becoming too dependent on pharmaceutical management? And most importantly, what did this look like to the public? Those concerns became even louder as horse racing faced growing scrutiny over safety, breakdowns, doping, scandals, and animal welfare concerns. Eventually, federal intervention arrived. In 2020, the Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Act was signed into law. For the first time, American thoroughbred racing would operate under national safety and medication standards. Then, in 2023, HISA's anti-doping and medication control program officially launched. That program immediately restricted Lasix use. The medication was banned in stakes races. It was banned for 2-year-olds, and a 3-year-old moratorium began while scientific studies examined whether a complete ban should eventually happen. That's what made this recent vote so important, because many people believe this was the moment American racing could fully eliminate race day Lasix forever. The pressure had been building for years. Animal welfare advocates wanted stronger reform. Some racing fans believed medication undermined confidence in the sport. International observers continued criticizing the United States for allowing race day drugs. And even within racing itself, opinions were sharply divided. Then came the scientific review. HISA's Furosemide Advisory Committee evaluated research regarding Lasix, equine health, and performance effects. According to HISA, the committee found that available scientific evidence did not support the claim that Lasix functions as a performance-enhancing substance. That finding became crucial because under the law, HISA's board could only maintain the current rule if it unanimously agreed on several conditions. The board had to conclude that modifying the prohibition was warranted, that it was in the best interest of racing that Lasix was not performance enhancing, and that public confidence would not be harmed by continuing the current policy. And in the end, the vote was unanimous, status quo, no full ban, no dramatic overhaul. The current rules remained exactly the same. Immediately, reactions exploded across the racing world. Many trainers and horsemen celebrated the decision. Some had feared a complete ban would fundamentally change how racehorses are managed in the United States. Supporters argued that Lasix is not about gaining an unfair advantage. They say it's about protecting horses that experience bleeding during strenuous exercise. Horsemen's organizations praised HISA for listening to scientific evidence and practical veterinary realities. For many within the industry, the decision represents stability, no sudden disruption, no major overhaul of veterinary practices, no immediate risks to field sizes or participation. But critics saw something completely different. To them, this decision represented race's inability to fully modernize, because outside the United States, major racing nations continue to operate without race day Lasix. Critics argue that American racing still looks out of step with global standards. And beyond science, there's another issue that keeps coming up: perception. Even if studies do not conclusively prove Lasix enhances performance, many casual fans still associate race day medication with doping culture. And perception does matter, especially for a sport already fighting for public trust. Horse racing has spent years trying to defend itself against criticism involving breakdowns, welfare scandals, and medication controversies. So critics argue that continuing race day medication, even partially, keeps damaging the sport's image. And honestly, this is where the conversation becomes incredibly complicated, because both sides genuinely believe they are protecting horses. Supporters argue that denying Lasix to horses prone to bleeding may compromise welfare. Critics argue that breeding and racehorses dependent on medication creates its own welfare problem. Neither side sees themselves as anti-horse. They simply disagree about what responsible care looks like. And this debate reflects a much bigger issue happening across equestrian sports right now. The public increasingly demands transparency, welfare reform, and accountability. At the same time, professionals inside these industries often argue that outsiders oversimplify extremely complicated veterinary realities. That disconnect creates constant tension, and Lasix has become one of the biggest symbols of that divide in racing. What's especially interesting about this vote is that HISA did not ignore science. In fact, they specifically pointed to scientific review as part of the reason for maintaining the current policy. That changes the conversation. For years, people often framed the Lasix debate as science versus tradition, but now both sides claim science supports them, and that means this argument is probably far from over, especially because public opinion evolves differently than scientific consensus. Even if studies fail to prove Lasix is performance enhancing, many fans may still dislike the idea of race day medication on principle alone. And in the social media era, perception can influence the future of a sport just as much as scientific evidence. There's also an economic reality here. A complete Lasix ban could have dramatically affected field sizes, veterinary management, and even breeding decisions. Some horsemen warned that removing Lasix entirely could reduce participation and create major disruptions for an industry already under financial pressure. And American racing is already facing serious challenges. Tracks continue to close, foal crops are shrinking, public interest is fragmented. So for some industry leaders, stability may have outweighed idealism. But whether that proves to be the right long-term decision remains unclear. Because horse racing's biggest challenge right now may not simply be regulation. It may be legitimacy. Can the sport convince modern audiences that horse welfare truly comes first? Can it rebuild trust after years of controversy? Can it balance science, economics, competition, and ethics all at the same time? Those are enormous questions, and one HISA vote cannot answer all of them. But what this decision did reveal is just how divided racing still is about its future. For now, Lasix remains. The current rules stay in place. 2-year-olds and stake horses remain prohibited from using it, while others can continue competing on it under existing regulations. But the larger debate about medication, integrity, welfare, and public trust is absolutely not over. If anything, this vote may have intensified it, because every time racing chooses caution over dramatic reform, supporters call it practical and critics call it avoidance. And somewhere in the middle of it all are the horses themselves, animals at the center of an industry constantly trying to balance tradition, science, business, competition, and ethics all at once. So now the question becomes, did they make the right decision? And remember, I am not a